All Start, a college football podcast for everyone and everyone else. I'm your host, John Buhler, staff writer, fansided.com. I'm joined today by a man who has the same amount of teams in his relationship in the playoff as I do, as of a few minutes ago. Cody Williams, content director, fansided.com. How the hell are you?
Yeah, North Carolina won the same amount of natties as NC State, as Georgia and Arizona State. I'm doing okay, man. It was a longer few days of college football playoff quarterfinals than we were expecting, that's for sure. Thoughts with everyone in New Orleans affected by that. Horrible stuff. I hate to see it. But we're here to, hopefully bring the vibes up and talk a little bit about football, which I think you might need some vibes brought up as well.
Yeah, a game was delayed today because of the senseless tragedy there on Bourbon Street in the wee hours of New Year's Day. Obviously, it's a terrible thing to wake up to.
Mhm.
Our hearts go out to everybody affected by this. Just awful.
Yeah.
Made the right call there to postpone the
Oh yeah.
game. I'm at the Peach Bowl and the Arizona State podcast. It's like, yeah, there's not going to be a night game tonight, and that was the right call. Still got a interesting Peach. Got a great Peach Bowl, an interesting Sugar Bowl,
hmm
dud of a Rose Bowl, and halfway decent Fiesta Bowl is kind of probably the way I would say it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't a dud of a Rose Bowl for one team. And so I'm gonna go ahead and get us going. I'm gonna run and start with Ohio State and running in the Rose Bowl because it was a dud of a Rose Bowl for Oregon, but it sure as hell wasn't a dud of a
No,
Rose Bowl for Ohio State. And I think this game particularly really highlighted for Ohio State my frustration and why I've been so critical of Ohio State this entire season because this is what they're capable of. This is the extra gear that they have with all the talent that they've collected to hit that no one else can. Like, if Ohio State plays like this for two more games, I don't think anyone can touch them for a
no,
national championship.
no. Like at the start of the year, they were one of four locks that everybody universally had to make the playoff: Georgia, Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State. And then like your next tier would be Penn State, Notre Dame, and then Ole Miss who didn't get it done. But like obviously we've gotten to the point where we've got four of the teams left that were of
Mhm.
that six. So like it'd be like that. But
It'd be like that.
but yeah, this is like the I read about this for fanside.com late last night. It's like, yeah, because they're winning all these playoff games and looking so dominant, it actually puts even more pressure on Ryan Day. It's kind of like Barry Switzer winning a Super Bowl with your Dallas Cowboys in 95. It was like
Right.
the thing could like drive itself. But eventually, the Mark Helfrich of the world takes over, and then you have some Dave Campo nonsense, and then you pull back. Not to say that that's Ryan Day, but you have the war chest of NIL that nobody else can match. You have relatively decent academic standards. Your talent rich state in Ohio. That's the best program in the country. When
hmm
it's firing all cylinders, that's Ohio State football. And yeah, I don't know if anybody's going to beat this team. I mean, Texas is going to be really up against it, and then obviously Penn State, Notre Dame on the other side. They have a puncher's chance too. But if Ohio State plays like this, yeah, good night.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I will say, like, we were talking about this before we, hit record, but I guess like the only thing that keeps me from wondering if Ohio State is going to win a national championship is can you do this for four games? Because like you
Right.
just said, we've seen Ryan Day not have his team ready. We've seen Ryan Day, put forth a bad game plan against the Michigan. Ryan Day and Chip Kelly. I don't want to, absolve Chip Kelly of blame in that, but like we've seen them not be this so often this season that can they put it together for four straight games? And I do think it's interesting, you look at all this, the four teams that had the bye are out of this. So like our first college football playoff national champion in the 12 team era is going to be someone who won four straight games to do it. And like that's my one bit of trepidation left with Ohio State is I don't know if we've seen them play at this level for four games in a row.
No, and that's kind of the other part of the run here for the first one.
Yeah.
Penn State's looking the part too. Penn State's
hmm
probably the most steady team left. We thought Oregon was that, and then Oregon got crushed. I'm gonna roast them later with Georgia at the end of the
Yes.
show. So, but yeah, Penn State. It seems as though like the stink that's on James Franklin is starting to come off. I feel like just getting there, he kind of feels like the pressure's off just to get in the playoff. He's doing more than just, screaming on the sidelines. He's putting his coaches in positions to succeed.
hmm
Tom Allen's way overqualified for what he's doing. He
Yeah.
should be a head coach. Andy Koltanecki, we'll see what happens. Maybe next year, it could be this year with some other gigs opening up. I mean, I saw what you said. Jimmy Rogers is at Washington State now, and
hmm
Charles Kelly. I I think we have maybe one other opening or something like that at
I
this
don't know
point.
at this point, man. It's been a dud of a coaching carousel. Let's be honest. I stopped take like it's not been what we thought it could be. And
No,
Ryan
no.
Day has a lot to do with that. Let's be clear.
Yeah, but it's yeah, Ryan Day is like that's the domino to fall there. But yeah, Penn State's they're trending up and they're playing with a lot of momentum and confidence. It wouldn't
I,
shock me if they could do it. Even, I mean, yeah, being on the easier side of the bracket helps, but I think they're not afraid of anybody.
no, I don't think they're afraid of anybody. It looks like Abdul Carter, he's posting his Darth Vader memes on Twitter or the X, whatever you want to call it. But it seems like he is going to be coming back for the semifinal, which is obviously a huge boost. But I think that Penn State proved a lot of things against Boise State. Like, you know, Boise State was outmatched. Like, let's not, make two bones about that. But at the same time, like, they're still a very good football team. And Penn State looked like they barely broke a sweat in beating them. Like they even with Abdul Carter not in the game, they were able to pressure Maddox Matson. They were able to limit Ashton Genty to, I believe, still under 4 yards per carry in that game. So like you were able to accomplish these things despite not having a top five pick in the NFL draft on your defensive line. Like that's good coaching. That's Tom Allen's effect on that. That's the, infrastructure that Penn State, one thing we've not questioned about Penn State in a long time is they're going to have defensive talent. They're going to have a good defense. And like, you're never going to have to worry about that. And that pipeline is still rolling. But what makes Penn State potentially special this year and potentially puts them in this category with Ohio State for a national championship is the offense. Like Drew Aller made some throws in that game where I was like, I started getting the vapors a little bit. Like I started
Yeah.
feeling it a little bit. And so like I was watching that and I think the thing that would make me scared of playing Penn State at this point is I don't think the offense outside of the Oregon game and the Big Ten championship game has put together four consistent quarters. And maybe they're not capable of it, but maybe they are. And if they are, then they can beat any team in the country.
Oh, totally. I feel like he's playing the best quarterback of anybody left right now. I think Ewers is still more talented than him, but like Ewers has an ebb and flow to his game.
My boy has brain farts
Yeah.
like once or twice a game, and I'm just like, brother, you were making this really hard to love you.
No. But I guess like going back to this before we tie a bow on this first round here before I go. Penn State, we said in the offseason with the end of the 14 playoff, we said this was the best program that never got a team into the playoff ever. They
Mhm.
recruited this level, they played this level. Just the problem is being in the old Big Ten East, you have to play Michigan and Ohio State every year. And James Franklin was not about that. Not at
No, he
all.
was not. And like it's got I honestly like the irony of all ironies would be for us to get an Ohio State Penn State national championship game and for James Franklin to overcome it on the biggest stage possible. Like that would be the irony of all ironies.
Yes, he's the Michael Jordan. Ryan Day is the Michael Jordan of James Franklin's.
That's right. Yeah. And you know what? Michael Jordan, when it came to getting it done in title games, he always lived up to being Michael Jordan. So if you're going to be the Michael Jordan of James Franklin, you're going to lose the national championship game.
And I don't know if Steve Sarkisian or Marcus Freeman are going to be Michael Jordan or Karl Malone, but I'm going to run with this for the next topic here. Um, these two programs have the necessary grit to
Mhm.
be national champions. I mean, we still have time to basically figure out what we're gonna pick. We're gonna do that. I think we're gonna do that on Wednesday. So next week we'll do Monday show, Wednesday show, and then we're gonna recap the semifinals after the Cotton Bowl between Ohio State and Texas. So three shows next week. And but as I was watching, Texas up close and Notre Dame following along very very close on the TV, not screaming at a TV, just being very quietly mad as
Yes.
that went down. These teams have been punched in the mouth and they've responded. Obviously,
Mhm.
Notre Dame had the worst loss of anybody who was in the final 25 rankings with the Northern Illinois loss. Haven't lost since.
Yeah.
I think Marcus Freeman said it best. He's like, we've been playing. I think it was one of the players or somebody on Notre Dame in the telecast was like, yeah, we've been playing a playoff game for like 3 months in a row.
I mean, that's true. Like they are battle tested because that Northern Illinois loss, like it is not it is not built the same as, Texas losing to Georgia in the regular season. Like that's not the same thing. Like you can recover from that. And that's pretty easily to recover from. Losing to Northern Illinois, your margin for error is gone. You have zero. And so you have to like you're in these high pressure situations. And honestly, I think even in the Sugar Bowl, we saw them get punched in the mouth and respond because the first couple offensive drives for Notre Dame, they really couldn't get anything going. Georgia's defense was in their ass and like absolutely giving them a hard time. And so like I was like, okay, we might be looking at, a 9-3 final score. Like I thought we were trending in that sort of direction with that game. But they came through with all three phases. Like you had the punt return touch or the kickoff return touchdown, excuse me, to start the second half. You had Riley Leonard capitalizing on the Georgia turnover at the end of the first half. Like when Notre Dame, I don't think Notre Dame is in the same mold as Ohio State and Penn State. They're definitely not, or even Texas for that matter. But I think what Notre Dame does so well is they pick their spots and they find like whenever the moment is there for them to capitalize on something, they don't let it go to waste.
Yeah, watching the game tonight, Al Golden was in his bag. I mean, he was
Hmm.
like one step ahead of Glenn Schumann the whole night. I think that just kind of shows, the experience on one side of like a guy who played college football for Penn
Man,
State in 91 versus a
right,
guy who's 35 years old who never played college football like yourself.
right.
But like, yeah, Al Golden was spectacular. They were down. Their nose tackle, Xavier
Mhm.
Watts kind of was flying all over the place. I think Denbrock did a great job using Faison. That's an area where I feel that like Georgia's been missing. They've been missing the Ladd McConkey kind of component
Mhm.
there, and they've
Yeah,
got that in that. Riley Leonard played. He played well enough to win. I mean, but he's got to play better than this to
yeah.
two more times to win a national championship. But yeah, I think Notre Dame. I'm not going to cross them off, but like it's a tough road, and we've been trying to cross them off every way. Like, if they were to beat Penn State, I'd be like, yeah, okay, they're definitely going to lose to Texas or Ohio State, and they may win
Yeah,
the whole thing. That,
100%.
that's their lot in life this year. That's okay.
No, it's definitely where they are. But I do think it's interesting that we're running with Notre Dame and Texas for being tough because, like, Notre Dame feels like it has to be tough because maybe they lack that extra level of talent. Texas feels like they have enough self-inflicted wounds that they have to be tough. Like there have been quarters, and I think early in the Arizona State game was in the Peach Bowl was a good example of this. There are moments where Texas looks unbeatable. There are
Right.
moments where every bit of talent that Texas has, you look at it and you're like, how can any team match up with this? And then you get to the third and fourth quarter of the Peach Bowl and you're like, how did Texas make the college football playoff? What the hell are we doing? Like Quinn Ewers is out here throwing ducks 40 yards down the field, or they're just like you have receivers not fighting for the ball. It's just it's mind-numbing some of the stuff that Texas does. And like I think that what I said not too long ago about Penn State's offense, that applies to Texas as a whole. Like if Texas strings four quarters together, they can beat anyone in the country. But I also do think you're right in that it's valuable in the fact that we haven't seen them string four quarters together. We haven't seen them play a complete game this entire season. But that breeds toughness. That breeds a wherewithal that you really can't teach. Like there are a lot of teams, I think, that were even in this college football playoff that if you put the game script in front of them that they had in the Peach Bowl against Arizona State, where you blow a 16-point second half lead, you miss two game-winning field goals that would have sealed the game and not forced overtime. You get down to fourth and 13 in the first overtime. There are a lot of teams that aren't pulling through in that spot, and Texas has the talent and has the toughness and has the ability to withstand that and still be surviving.
Yeah, they're kind of like a Georgia team from the three previous years, like
Hmm.
22 and 23, where they're immensely talented, but they play with their food. And
Yes.
we didn't see Arch at all in the Peach Bowl, and probably a good thing in a way.
Yeah. I actually just wrote this for fansided.com before we got on the program, but I think that what we saw from Gunner Stockton in the Georgia game, which we'll unpack that more, should be a warning sign or a word of caution to Steve Sarkisian about pulling the Arch Manning trigger because Gunner Stockton's talented. Arch Manning's talented. And there are going to be splash plays where you look at these kids and it's going to be like, oh yeah, that's why you would put him in the game. But what really stuck out to me with Stockton, particularly facing this Notre Dame defense with Al Golden and like with Al Golden calling this defense and knowing how to attack and find the pressure points, is the inexperience just really shown through for me when it came to Stockton. Like there were times where he got pressure in his face and he panicked. He looked like someone who hadn't faced a lot of live game pressure. And I know Arch Manning has a little bit more experience, but not that much, and not on this level and not in this spotlight. And so like I worry about what Arch Manning would look like because you look back at, the Georgia game when Arch Manning came in because just stop the bleeding to get anything
Yeah.
going. And like he looked like a deer in the headlights. And granted, he has a little bit more experience against them since then, but I still have a hard time seeing in this moment that looking much different.
Yeah, I mean, like Arizona State's counterpart, like Sam Levitt started the whole year and he played really well. Pick's not really on him. That happens in that part
Yeah.
of the game. You got to make a
And you're trying to
play.
force the issue too.
Yeah, yeah. You got to be aggressive. You got to basically make up for the talent disparity you have with Texas and everything like that. But it was the big thing was Ewers came to play in overtime. He checked and basically like fourth and long. I was like, I'm talking to Rosemary. I'm like, okay, they need to basically just go all out blitz and just crush him because no, because Quinn can't really move.
Yeah.
And then he checked to max protect and then basically just found a guy along the seam for the touchdown and everything like that.
That's why I
That's
can't, those throws are why I can't quit
no,
Quinn
no,
Ewers, dude. It's
no,
like, it's just like,
no,
oh my God, this is in you, brother.
no, like, but it's like Texas and Georgia are very similar. I think Texas has better receivers.
Hmm.
I think Georgia just has better the defensive backs are a little bit better. I don't know. There's
Yeah.
something with like level of the defense is just a little bit more. I think Georgia has the ability to explode runs a little bit more than
Yeah.
Texas.
Oh,
They're
definitely.
they're they're very similar. I think Texas offensive line is a little bit better, but it's again it's not by much. But I will say though, Texas is like they're starting to kind of they've had some adversity. You have the two losses to
Mhm.
Georgia. You've had some other close games here. Obviously, Arizona State. They didn't overlook them at all. I think that
No.
was no, but it was there's something about this Texas team, particularly with you, where everybody's like saying, okay, you need to leave Arch just going out and being an ass and just saying like, yeah, Uncle Peyton told me I needed to say I'm staying here. And it's just like you leave well enough alone, man. Like
Yeah.
you're winning a national championship with Ewers and not Manning this year. That's how that's gonna go.
Ironically enough, one thing that I think would really benefit Texas because their run game has improved, but it's still not good. And, you mentioned Georgia having a better run game. I fully agree with that. But I also think that the one thing, like what Texas, I honestly think would really benefit from is getting back to the all gas, no brakes mentality. Because I feel like so many times when we've seen Texas get in these hairy spots, whether it was Arizona State, whether it was, I'm trying to think, there was a game late in the SEC season that I'm totally blanking on, but someone they should have, easily handled, and they had them at bay, and then they allowed them to come back in the game. And I think that Texas's inability to run the ball effectively and consistently is really affecting their ability to salt away games. But I think with the talent that you have, that if you have the all gas, no brakes mentality and you're not slowing down and you just try to keep pouring it on, kind of like what Ohio State did against Oregon, like there was no sit on the ball with Ohio State and Oregon in the Rose Bowl. There was just, we're just going to keep firing it until you can't possibly mathematically come back in this game. And I think if Texas adopts a little bit more of that mentality, that makes them a far more dangerous team than trying to get up and then salt away a lead because we've seen that time and again, and like it doesn't work out.
Totally. And I think one way to probably encapsulate Texas and Notre Dame here when it comes to adversity, like Notre Dame's faced real adversity. Texas has kind of been more self-inflicted, if you
Yeah.
will. But like, the Steelers mantra of like, we gotta throw a firecracker in the locker room and blame it on
Yeah,
somebody else. They're coming in here.
that's
And
right.
Thomas got like a chart hand. He's got a Chubbs Peterson hand. They're coming in here for you.
They're coming, boys. Let's get fired up. I love it. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I don't know how to transition, but we're gonna pass now after we talk about firecrackers in the locker room. We're gonna pass, and this is kind of more of an ethereal topic than I think anything that else we're gonna talk about. We talked a lot of ball, but I'm gonna go to Arizona and Boise State. I'm not, and I what we're passing on is the thought that they didn't belong in the playoff. They absolutely did. I think both teams more than acquitted themselves. But what I'm also gonna pass on is the fact that they deserved buys because I think that's the big discussion point when we're coming out of these first two rounds of the 12 team playoff is that the playoff could really benefit, and I think we as fans would also benefit from like a different seeding format. Like you still have automatic qualifiers, but the buys are the four highest ranked teams, and I think we have a lot more like, you know, I would much rather see a first round matchup between Boise State and Indiana, which is what we probably like potentially would have had. I would much rather see that than seeing Indiana get smoked and then seeing something like, Arizona State and Boise State having a bye, but having to face two of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, like if we would have done this anyway, like if we'd have basically would have gone without like the reseeding of it all, one would have been Oregon, two would have been Georgia, three Texas, Penn State, four. And
Yeah.
you would have had Texas playing in the probably they'd be playing the Peach Bowl again, I think, and then
Yeah.
Penn State would be playing the Fiesta Bowl. So it wouldn't have made a damn bit of difference, but
Yeah, but I mean, like it would have shaken up like the first round would have shaken out differently, and I think that's what it comes down to. Like you wouldn't have had a situation like we're gonna talk about Oregon, and they have their own set of problems that we will discuss. But like I do like see Oregon, like an Oregon fan's point that like we were the number one seed, and our reward for being the number one seed is we get to play Ohio State or Tennessee. Like, thanks a hell of a lot, committee. Like, that's not an advantageous place to be in. And it's also not a place you're going to be in if you're just seeding the like if the buys are the four highest seeded teams or highest ranked teams, excuse me.
So like your five would have been what? Five would have been Notre Dame,
Yeah.
six would have been Ohio State, seven Tennessee.
And then I like if I'm not I'm looking up the rankings right now just to get us.
Yeah,
All right, so our six would have been Ohio State, seven Tennessee, eight Indiana, nine Boise State, 10 SMU, and
11,
then
11
our
Arizona State, 12 Clemson.
12 Clemson. So that's giving us Clemson Notre Dame, which I think is a much more like
Hmm.
interesting game than what we got with Notre Dame and Indiana, or Clemson Texas, frankly. That's giving you Ohio State, Arizona State. I
Yeah.
mean, like, Arizona State, yes, I mean, you're ranked 12th. Like, if you're going to prove yourself, prove it at Ohio State. Like, go out there and prove it. That's going to give you SMU at Tennessee. Based on what we saw from both of those teams, like that might be a good game. Who the hell knows? Like I don't know what the hell either of those teams are at this point. And then, like I said, Boise State, Indiana is a game I really, really want to see. I think that's a fun matchup. And you're still going to be up against it because the winner of that game is going to play Oregon. But I think like when you start to break it down of what that would have looked like, it makes a lot more sense for what we're trying to prescribe to this playoff. And I don't think Arizona State and Boise State, even if they are deserving to be in the playoff, I don't think them having the bye and being in these matchups against frankly blue bloods, like that's not advantageous for the sport or for the college football fan either.
No, it's like again, like every time you have a new format, you bring things in here. Baseball format's screwy. I don't care what any other color
Yeah.
says. It's really screwy. I've seen it
Oh, the
happen.
wild card
It-
format's real dumb, but
yeah. I mean, the NFL's fine. I think they've been able to figure
yeah.
that out. So I think they've kind of gotten to the point with that. NHL is crazy. MLS is all over the place. That thing is
Yeah.
weird. You end up having Atlanta United beating Messi and Inter's just losing its damn mind, and then it's like you run out of gas there. But yeah, you gotta applaud people trying new things here, and
Yeah.
they got the right teams in there. The seating may have been a little wonky. I don't think you can really say the momentum thing. It's not that like the Oregons, Georgias, Arizona State, Boise State didn't have momentum. I think the other ones just did. And then obviously Arizona State and Boise are not quite the same level of players, and Georgia's playing with a backup quarterback. Like,
Yeah.
come on. Like,
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, we'll discuss Oregon too because I think there's our own set of problems with Oregon that we'll get to in just a minute. But I'm with you, but I also think like just spoke about how it rewards the fans. It also rewards these programs. This is not a spot Boise State or Arizona State like conceivably should or not expects to be in. I think is probably the right way to say it. Like maybe Boise State based on where their status was with Ashton Genty going into the group of five this season, but like Arizona State was projected to finish bottom of the Big 12. This was not like a spot they were supposed to be in. And then you put them up in a spot where your reward is you get to play Texas. You put Boise State and their reward is you get to play Penn State. Like that's not a reward. And like I think if you have them not getting that automatic bye, you're actually setting their program up for better chances of success. Not just a momentum factor or anything like that, but the idea of Boise State has a much better chance of beating an Indiana and getting a playoff win on their program's resume than they do of beating someone like a Penn State. Like that's just the fact of the matter. And I think the same is probably true for like I mean, Arizona State would have been in the same, David versus Goliath situation, but they obviously handled themselves pretty damn well as David. So who's to say they wouldn't have done the same thing against Ohio State? Who's to say Ohio State's coming out with the same mentality as they did against Tennessee? Like it changes the calculus for what it means for these programs and like what it could potentially mean for their like long-lasting implications for these programs.
so like your 7-10 would have been what, Tennessee, the Tennessee
Tennessee,
and
SMU.
then that would they would have played Georgia. Okay, that would have
Yeah.
been yeah, you get like a rematch from the regular season or I don't think Georgia's ever played SMU, so that would be cool.
Yeah. Like the more I think about it, the more like I think they may have overcomplicated the seating in a way that ultimately hurts what the playoff could have been.
Yeah, I mean, like we've seen what, 8 games at this point. We've had one really competitive game.
Yeah. Like truly, truly, really competitive. Like Boise State put up a fight against Penn State, but like at no point was I worried that Boise State was going to win the game.
No, I mean, like we just watched like probably the second or third most competitive game with Georgia and Notre Dame, and it really, really wasn't.
That was just cavemen bashing rocks at one another.
People will watch anything. People will watch curling. People will watch, anything on the Ocho, and they'll watch Oregon football. Apparently, yeah. We're going to move on to our last topic here, and I'm going to punt on this. I don't know if Oregon or Georgia are going to be able to make it back next year.
Mhm,
These two teams have, I mean, probably will, but I can't definitively say that.
mhm.
Uh, the Oregon loss left a really, really bad taste in my mouth, and I felt kind of reaffirmed with it. I think Georgia's kind of in a transitional period here because yeah, yes, Stockton will probably be better, but Starks is gone, and Michael
Mhm.
Williams is gone, and Ismail Mondon's gone, and Jalen Walker's gone. So you got to figure that out.
Everett's probably gone too on the
Everett's
outside as
probably
well. Yeah.
gone. I think Dominic Levitt's probably out of eligibility as well.
Mhm.
So
I think him and Smith are both out of eligibility, if I'm
yeah,
not
Smith
mistaken.
definitely. Smith's been here forever, but like
Smith's been there since we were in college, bro.
he went by Ryan Smith back then. He changed his name
That's
to more eligibility.
right. Oh God, I
And
mean, hell of a hustle if you can pull it off.
no, he does it again. So he was Ryan Smith, and he's A Ryan Smith, and he's B Ryan Smith. So then he's Ryan Smith.
Oh, I love it.
Uh,
And then Dryan, we're Dryan Smith.
Giants, we're Giants, we're trying. Yeah, this show's gone off the rails. But let's go back to Oregon. Then we'll kind of finish up with some Georgia here.
Yeah,
Oregon is pitiful.
yeah,
It was really bad. I'm coming back from the Peach Bowl. I looked down the phone. They're down 14-0, and everyone's like, "Yeah, this isn't looking good." And then like by the time I get set up and get ready to work, like they're already down like 34-0 or something insane.
yeah. 34 nothing. And like, I mean, I think there were a multitude of problems I saw with Oregon. The first off is, Dan Lanning has done a phenomenal job, I think, of recruiting his front seven on defense. The secondary is not where it needs to be. It's not you're not looking at a Georgia secondary of when Dan Lanning was, in his heyday in Athens. You're not looking at that type of caliber. So I think that like if I'm Dan Lanning and I'm self-assessing, that in my side of the ball, that's what I'm assessing. We need to get better in the secondary. We need to be an elite secondary if we're going to compete for a national championship. The flip side of that is also the quarterback, which you were spot on. I'm going to give you your flowers for this. You picked Ohio State in this game. I picked Oregon. I was very wrong. You were very right. And one of the reasons you were on that side was you doubted Dylan Gabriel's ability in this big game. Dylan Gabriel did not look like himself until about halfway through the third quarter. And the game was already out of hand by that point. So like what are we doing here? He looked like someone who was physically outmatched. And like I think like that was kind of your point the entire time.
Maybe that's what the Pineapple Express wore off finally.
Yeah, oh my God. For those who didn't see, we're pretty sure Dylan Gabriel was stoned out of his mind giving one of his media interviews in the days leading up to the game. Because
Uh,
my God, he's talking about like it's just great to be out here playing in the sun, man. Like it was incredible stuff.
it sounded like Don Nelson retiring, living in Hawaii. He's just
Yes,
like, man, I've just been
exactly.
enjoying some grass, man. He's wearing only fish ties.
That's right. Oh my God.
But I think you bring up a good point with landing like the secondary, and that's going to be a problem because he's a linebacker. That's the linebacker's his position group, particularly outside linebacker. And I don't know for whatever reason, like Kirby Smart, Nick Saban being defensive backs coaches. I mean, that would be the Stoops brothers were all defensive backs. I think it's like being a catcher in baseball or a point
Yeah,
guard. You see everything in front of you, and I think it's like why like there's no centers who are NBA head coaches, or there's not a
right.
lot of like relief pitchers who end up doing that. I think it's a different. It's not. I think with like a secondary coach, it's like it's more premeditated. Whereas like linebackers, like go get him, react, go throw a firecracker.
We're just throwing firecrackers around here, man. But no, and like that's definitely part of it. Like your DNA of who you are as a player and as a coach, obviously, like that's something that's hard to erase. And like that's when you have to rely on your staff to get it done, and like to to fill in your weaknesses, I guess is the best way to say that. Like that's where staff construction really comes into this. And do you have another point of the defense? Because I do have something I wanted to say about Dylan Gabriel. But if you have a point of defense, I don't want to cut you off there.
Um, I think it kind of probably ties a bow on it. It's like I don't think Oregon's ever won a national title, and at the end of the day, it goes back to the same thing. You're just soft in the end. And I
Yeah.
thought they were there with Dan Lanning. I really did. It's kind of more about uniforms and finesse and everything like that. And I think of the other three teams that lost in this thing, maybe my Georgia bias is you're dealing with a backup quarterback playing
Yeah.
his first start. I'm not trying to like blame that for anything like that, but that's something that Oregon wasn't dealing with. You're not dealing with a talent disadvantage like Arizona State's with Texas. They almost did it.
Hmm.
Boise State had the same thing. They held their own versus, Penn State similarly to Georgia, but they did what they needed to do. It just wasn't a fair fight, and it was a fair fight there in Pasadena. And for defensive lapses, getting punched in the mouth by the combination of Judkins, who absolutely made the right call to go there and not
Yeah.
stay at Ole Miss because he's playing for a serious groundhog. And Ryan,
Yes.
if he was in a Vegas, he'd be a groundhog. That'd be what he.
Also, I just glanced over the TV screen. We are at the start of the second quarter, and Ole Miss is already up 14-0 on Duke.
Yeah. I keep thinking that's that the Duke's Mayo Bowl, but like it's not. So, Lane's living his best life in Duval right now.
100%. But the point I wanted to make on Gabriel is the more I've thought about this and the more I've thought about your points on Dylan Gabriel, and I also think it goes back to the larger point you just made about Oregon being soft. They need a game changer at quarterback. They need one. And like I was highly critical of Bo Nix because I think he is a overqualified game manager. I think is probably the best way to describe Bo Nix. Like he's obviously talented, but I don't think he puts it all together when he plays quarterback. I just don't. He didn't at Oregon, and like I think Sean Payton is doing him immense favors now, just like Will Stein did at Oregon. Dylan Gabriel is in that cut from that same cloth. He has size limitations, he has arm and throw power limitations, and you kind of have to design the offense around what he's good at. You need a game changer. Maybe they have that. Maybe Dante Moore is the force multiplier that the Oregon has been waiting on. But until you do that, like it was such a stark difference between Will Howard, who I've been highly critical of and highly dubious of most of the season. Will Howard played his ass off. Will Howard played a phenomenal game and has played two phenomenal games in a row. And watching that in comparison to Dylan Gabriel, like there's just levels to this. And I think like Oregon needs someone who's not just going to go out there and run the offense. They need someone who's going to go out there and elevate the offense and make an already talented an offense that relies so heavily on scheme, just make it better because when you need a play, they're capable of doing that.
I think it kind of even bring up a great point with the whole force multiplier thing here. I think probably the best way to say this, look, Oregon is at a geographic recruiting disadvantage. There's
Mhm.
not a lot of players in Oregon. It's a state of 3 million people. It just
Yeah.
doesn't. You got to get a lot of people from Northern California, but they've been able to use the Nike. They've been able to use the cool uniforms. They've been able to use being nationally relevant since Mike Bellotti took over in the mid 90s, back when they were really physical. He
Yeah.
was all about like staring down at the line, just like this.
Right down it, baby.
Yeah. So you gotta get the force multiplier there at quarterback, maybe a couple of other spots though. You kind of need like you need like an Abdul Carter type of player.
Mhm.
You need like a trying to think who else is a force multiplier across the board. You would like an Ashton Genty or something,
Yeah.
someone like that.
I mean, Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State. Like,
Jeremiah Smith, James Pierce Jr. with Tennessee, like play like every team, everybody that's in the playoff, Cam Skattebo, everybody in
yeah.
the playoffs has some guy like that. Jalen Walker with Georgia, Malachi Starks with Georgia. You need to have more guys like that, and the guy we thought it was going to be was Dylan Gabriel, just wasn't that.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that. And like maybe that's a talent evaluation thing. Maybe, they thought Dylan Gabriel was going to be that and he wasn't. But I mean, you need that. And like Oregon has a tremendous collection of talent. There's no denying that. Like Dan Lanning's recruiting at a high level. He's hitting the transfer portal at a high level. But at a certain point, if you're not having those game changers, those force multipliers, like it's going to hold you back.
Yes, and just to tie bow on this with Oregon before we finish up with Georgia here, because
Yeah.
there's this is a bigger problem. This is we open up a can of worms here. So we would venture to guess, say that next year, Penn State and Ohio State are going to be back in the playoff. Will Howard's out of eligibility. Doesn't matter if it's Julian Sayin or Quinn Ewers again starting. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're going to be in there. Drew Aller's back. Um, I like Indiana's chances as well, particularly with picking up Fernando Mendoza.
Hmm.
It kind of almost feels like Oregon's like the one that could slip, and you're wondering like who could potentially take that. I don't know if it's Indiana. I don't know if it's Illinois. I don't know who it is, but
Illinois, Michigan, like there's some
yeah.
candidates there.
Yeah, so like maybe their spot in the playoff is not as solidified as we thought because we've already unpacked this with Georgia. We feel that like Texas will probably be really good. We think that like LSU is going to be really good. I think Tennessee is going to be really good. Trying to think who else was out there. I think Florida is going to be really good.
Florida's going to be really good. I mean, we're going to see Auburn tick up. I don't know if they're going to be a playoff contender, but they can be someone who knocks out a playoff contender for
Yeah.
sure.
South Carolina.
South Carolina, yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's why I'm not so sure it's going to be Oregon because we don't know with Dante Moore. They've been steady at quarterback, but when it came to like elevating, it just hasn't been the guy that they need.
Yeah.
And I guess the Georgia part of it, I'll let you have the floor here if you've got anything with about this because you said Georgia's the least likely of the 8 teams outside of Arizona State and Boise to make it back next year. Do you feel affirmed in that? How are you kind of feeling about that sort of thing?
I'm gonna answer your question with a question for you because like obviously I'm deep in college football, but you're deeper in Georgia than I am, and I know that. Do you, if you're Kirby Smart, do you hit the transfer portal and look for someone other than Gunner Stockton? Because Gunner Stockton looked talented, but he looked miles behind his development. And like based on what I saw against the highest level of competition that, you know, in the playoff, Gunner Stockton did not look ready to be a starting quarterback. I'm not saying he'll never get there, but I'm saying as of right now, he does not look ready to be a starting quarterback.
Yes, and it's not for Gunnar Stockton reasons. It's for Jaden Rashada reasons. I feel like he's
Okay.
hitting the portal too.
Okay, and I can totally see that. He seems like a our another Bear Alexander candidate are going on here.
I think the fact that Kirby and Bobo trusted Ryan Puglisi to be the backup, they've got another 4-star coming in, Ryan Montgomery, who they think a lot of
Mhm.
coming in. Again, it's the same thing with Vandegrift turning entering the portal last year, who's now going to sell some insurance or whatever.
Updating the LinkedIn, baby.
Yeah, yeah, we're all about that. But with Beck declaring, you have to go get somebody at this point. I don't know who that would be. I don't know if yours is an option. Maybe. Trying to think who's even still out there at the quarterback thing. I thought Fernando was like the guy, but you know, there'll be other opportunities for people to enter the portal.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I just don't really know who that would be.
No, I don't either. Maybe it's Quinn. I mean, who know? Like, I think we're going to see a battle for Quinn Ewers. Like, I truly think that is something that we are going to see in the coming weeks. Like, I think there is going to be an arms race essentially. There's already been a reported $6 million NIL offer out there, and I can think of 5 programs off the top of my head that would offer that to him right now. Like,
I,
if
I,
you're Oregon, if you're Ohio State, if you're Georgia, Jalen Milroe just declared for the draft today. If you're
yeah,
Alabama, you don't have a proven option to coming in behind Jalen Milroe at quarterback. Do you go to like find that bridge with Quinn Ewers? Because you know it's a 1 year experiment, but you also know that Quinn Ewers has been in the playoff 2 years in a row.
that's the only guy we know for certain who's going to be on Ohio State next year is Lincoln Kienholz. That's it.
And like,
Eh,
do you want to start Lincoln Kienholz at quarterback? If I'm Ryan Day, I sure as hell
No,
don't. So
no,
like,
no, no. But I think the biggest thing with Georgia that I have the concerns about is like I still think we've really the offensive line's kind of been an issue. Like, I mean, Dylan Fairchild played really good in the interior. Tate Ratledge played great all year. Monroe really got his lunch ate all day.
Yeah.
And you've had other really good left tackles over the years and stuff. But like, there's not the Broderick Joneses, there's not the Andrew Thomases out there right
Mhm.
now. It's because particularly with Stockton just not being so not having that many starts, he's not used to feeling the pressure, and
Yeah.
I feel like that really hurt him tonight for sure.
Oh, definitely. And that, like going back to our conversation about Oregon, like we know on defense, Georgia has plenty of force multipliers. Like Georgia grows force multipliers on defense on trees. I think one of the things that really stood out to me on Georgia, in addition to the offensive line, because you're not wrong there, like I think we saw the the pillars of sand that the offensive line was built on when Tate Ratledge was out with injury.
Yeah,
Like we saw that a little bit. But there were not difference makers on this Georgia offense this year. At wide receiver, at running back, like you didn't have a Brock Bowers, you didn't have a Lad McConkey, you didn't have a George Pickens, you didn't have someone who's just going to like, hey, I need you to get the ball right here. Like Dominic Lovett's the closest thing you had to that, but even he, I think, is just a step down from what those players in previous Georgia offenses have been.
yeah, like Oscar Delp and Nate Frazier have showed signs of that, but they weren't like as featured as much as they should be.
And they're also green too. Like let's be
Yeah,
both of them are quite green in terms of like being able to step right into that role. Like not like Jeremiah Smith's guys who just show up and are that. Those guys do not grow on trees. That is a rarity. That is not something we see at every program with every player.
did you know his cousin's Geno Smith?
I did know that. Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Those
I came
the
across that.
bloodlines run deep.
I sat there and like Smith from like Miami. I'm like, I know that's where Geno's from. I never put two and two together. Also, the fact that Geno's like a good 15 years older than him.
Look, man, I'll tell you what I didn't expect is I did not realize that Ryan Clark's son is on Notre Dame. How's
No,
Ryan Clark got a kid that's in college? Ryan Clark, like, dude's like 40.
he's probably like a really good looking 45. Also, Bryant Young's son, who's named Bryce Young. Yeah, I don't think he played after the making like three boneheaded things. Mark is like, you're gonna come coach next to me.
Same with the Georgia walk-on who accidentally tripped the ref. He's gonna come coach next to Kirby Smart.
Yeah, that was I saw that like that's how tonight's gone. All right.
That was tough, man. Yeah, he might not have a walk-on spot next year at Georgia, just knowing Kirby Smart.
Kirby Smart's gonna go at Jake Pope, you're a dumbass.
That's right, 100%.
We might be dumbasses, but we're having a good time here. Yes, this was 3 yards and a cloud of punt here after the college football playoffs, national quarterfinals. You can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter or the X at Buhler118. You can follow Cody Williams at the Sizzle20. You can follow the show at CFP Fall Start. Like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. Here it comes. It's coming. 5-star review. Just like that hand that blocked that Bert Auburn kick. That guy sucks.
I saw a screenshot on the X later or this afternoon, and it was Steve Sarkisian like hyping him up before the last kick, and someone said this had to be the worst pep talk of all time.
Or maybe it's like him like screaming at the guy like in the Cotton Bowl last year. Or
Exactly.
the Sugar Bowl last year. No touching.
No touching. Absolutely none.
Oh man, but yeah, it's nice to get a. It's nice to do this. Obviously, we wish we could have done this last night, but for different reasons, we chose not to. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's nice to just have me not caring about college football, my team anymore for the rest of this year. It's going to be great.
Welcome
I
to
can
my
be,
world, brother.
dude,
I've
it's
been here
great.
since like week 5.
Still got to care about one more Falcons game, and that's just probably
Much
wasted.
like, look, I'll still rep the Dallas Cowboys till I die, but also haven't cared about them since like week 5. It's been a blissful end of the college football and NFL season for me. I'm just here for all the vibes.
We're here for all the vibes. New year, same us, same Antonio, and this is false start.